everyone. We're just taking a few more minutes to see if all of our commissioners will be attending.
Good evening. Welcome to the May or the I keep thinking it's May, the June 5th meeting of the Historic Preservation Commission. I'm going to call this meeting to order. First item on our agenda is for the commissioners. I would love for them to introduce themselves, to do roll call. I'd start on this side.
Douglas Edmondson, Commissioner.
Laura Kinseth, Vice Chair.
Joy Porter, Commissioner.
Ann Nichols.
And Susan Presti, Chair. Thank you all. First order of business is a review and approval of the minutes from last month from May. Do I have any corrections or additions to the minutes or a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Commissioner Nichols has moved to approve. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Vice Chair Kinseth has seconded. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Those opposed? That passes. Thank you. Next agenda item is notice of council action. I don't see any. Is there any revision to that item?
No, there's.
Okay. And then we move to unfinished business. As we do that, I would like to propose a change in the agenda order for this evening, and I need the commission to approve that. I would like to move item number 2, DEM C 2401 to the last item under unfinished business. Move the others up. Is there any, and actually move, which one do we want to put first? Well, just move that one down. Any issues with that? And could I have a motion to approve that revision?
I'll move to approve moving item number 2 down to the last item.
And I'll second it.
And I have a motion by Vice Chair Kinseth and a second by Commissioner Porter. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed? Thank you. I appreciate that. I think that'll be our longest agenda item. All right. First item under unfinished business then is MCAC 2409-701 Manitou Avenue.
Thank you. We are requesting a continuance of the 701 Manitou Avenue MCAC. We do not have any changes to the library to bring back to the commission at this time, but we will share an update later in the meeting.
Do I have a motion to continue that item?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
Okay. Commissioner Nichols has moved to continue it to our July 15th meeting. And Vice Chair Kinseth has seconded that. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? That is continued to July 15th. Okay. Next item is DEMC 2402, 1126 Manitou Avenue, the Ute Pass Hotel demolition.
Thank you very much. For the record, Fred Rolandhagen, Planning Director. We are recommending continuing this agenda item, and we had a memo that was supposed to be put in supposed to get in the agenda packet, and it wasn't, and we would like to read it into the record at this time.
Very good.
This is to Historic Preservation Commission proposal regarding demolition of multiple structures located at 1126 Manitou Avenue. In terms of background, this property was recently purchased by the Manitou Springs Metropolitan District with the intent of seeking approval to demolish the structures. The item was placed on the May HPC agenda at the request of the applicant and in an effort to be customer service oriented. However, staff has not received a complete application as of the publishing of this report and this agenda, and now recommends continuation of the item. Continuation without a specific date will allow the item to be removed from the agenda until a complete application is received, at which point the item will be placed on the following agenda and then publicly noticed. So the motion, the proposed motion is to postpone this item DEMC 2402 for further consideration.
Okay. Do I hear a motion from the commissioner to that effect, or is there, well, let's do that and then we can discuss.
I would make that motion. I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion to postpone this without a specific date by Commissioner Nichols and a second by Vice Chair Kenseth. Is there any discussion from the commissioners? Okay, let's go vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And that passes 5-0. Thank you. That being done, the last item on our unfinished business agenda for this evening will be DEMC 2401, demolition of 328 Manitou Avenue, the Green Willow Hotel. Before we begin, just to remind everybody that this, the process will be, staff will present this item and then the applicant can add or expand upon the presentation, and commissioners will ask questions of staff, and then after the applicant has presented, we'll ask questions, clarification from the applicant, and then we will open it up for public comment, comments in favor of and against the proposed demolition. And then we will close the public comment. The commissioners will debate and discuss and make a decision. And before we begin, I need to ask commissioners if there's anybody who has ex parte communications or conflict of interest for this agenda item that they wish to disclose. Hearing none, we'll move forward. Okay. Item 4, DEMC 2401. Who would be presenting this?
Thank you, Chair Presti. Aaron Ringsred, Planner and Landscape Architect 2 for the record. Presenting DMC 2401, request for demolition at 328 Manitou Avenue, also known as the Green Willow. 1 second while we get the presentation on the screen. Awesome. Okay. So before we get into this application in detail, I wanted to go a quick overview of process. So this application is before you tonight as a demolition application. We held the preliminary hearing already, and this is the final hearing where HPC will make their recommendation to City Council, with City Council being the final decision maker on demolition applications. CPC will also be hearing this development application as part of their the minor development plan review process and the waiver of replat process. They too will make their recommendation to City Council with the proposed path forward. HPC is reviewing this under Chapter 17. CPC is reviewing this application under Chapter 18, covering things like setbacks, landscape standards, etc. A little bit of background on this property. As we discussed on the preliminary hearing and during the executive session, this property was opted out at the formation of the districts. However, it is still within historic district boundaries. It was determined that opting out means that design guidelines do not apply for future construction except as part of the demolition provisions of existing structures. Maintenance provisions also apply to opted out properties. Opting out does not change historic district boundaries. There was a request to redrawn the boundaries to exclude this property in 2009. However, that was rejected by City Council ordinance, and that did not affect the withdrawn status. The request being made this evening is the proposed demolition of 14 cabins, a bathhouse, the office building, and an office building of the property currently known as Green Willow Cottages in order to facilitate redevelopment of the site. The property is zoned commercial, but it is located in the Villas Historic Subdistrict. The diagram up on the screen right now reflects the request of the applicant for demolition. Those structures crossed out are structures to be removed. Those items that are red boundaries with a hatch are items to remain, and the shed outlined in blue is to be relocated. I have next in the slide pictures of these proposed structures. These are images of cabins 10 and 12. These are images of all of the cabins on the north side of the property, highlighted in yellow in the site plan on the top left of the screen. Next slide, please. This is a closer up view of cabin 3 and 4 to be demolished, and cabin 16. And then these are images of the bathhouse as well as cabins 14 and 15. Highlighted in the site plan in green here is one of the existing residences to remain. 332 is the building identification. Next slide, please. And this single family residence here is also to remain at 330. These are images of the area highlighted in green. The applicant has stated that it is their intention to preserve the park-like amenities at the street edge or the south edge of the property, including existing heritage trees and the stream there as well, and its adjacent characteristics. Next slide, please. So as a reminder on the screen, we have the property called out, identified as a commercial zone district property. Staff has reviewed this application under the application criteria for Chapter 17.04.080. Section C and 5. And we have found the application materials to be complete. I am going to go through each of these criteria one by one and how we deemed them complete. So statements regarding the architectural and historical significance have been provided. That was provided by the applicant, but is also provided here from our historic district design guidelines, wherein the property is identified as being important to the district or to the city from its history as an auto court in terms of auto court tourism. It is also noted for its park-like setting adjacent to the stream, and it is noted that it was included based on proximity for the Villa Historic Subdistricts, but its significance is auto tourism, which does differ slightly to some of the other structures within that specific historic subdistrict. Next slide, please. The applicant also provided a report of the structural integrity as provided by at least one certified structural engineer. RMG is the structural engineer that provided a report of the structural integrity of these properties, as well as some imagery of challenges with this property. Some of those challenges relate to the utility placement and the grading around these buildings, as well as the depth of foundation, some of the bowing that is being seen in the floor, as well as more technical information, that letter that was provided to the commission. Next slide, please. They also were asked to provide the location of this property within the Historic Preservation District as shown on a vicinity map that was provided for the applicant and is seen here on this slide. The property called out in the sort of cyan turquoise color there is the property that we are discussing tonight, 328 Manitou Ave. The applicant has also provided information and documentation on economic feasibility of rehabilitation, including anticipated economic returns after rehabilitation has been completed, as stated in section 17.04.090. Next slide, please. We are going to go into this economic hardship chapter here. They provided an economic hardship letter that went through each of these criteria, identifying their response to each of these criteria, as well as providing supporting information for those statements. They are, sorry, I'm getting ahead of my. The economic hardship does require the applicant to prove the existence of a condition of economic hardship. The applicant must establish and the commission must find the resource is incapable of earning a reasonable economic return without making the alterations or demolition proposed. This finding shall be made by considering, and the applicant shall submit to the commission evidence establishing by the following factors. A, that an undue economic hardship to the applicant would result from denial or recommendation of disapproval of the application or from upholding the decision of staff, and that no feasible alternatives or mitigation measures are available to the applicant, and that the applicant would not enjoy reasonable economic use or return from the property should the proposed project be disapproved or the decision of staff upheld, and that the nature or extent of economic hardship that would result from the disapproval of a proposed project application would exceed the historic or cultural value of the resource, and that the hardship is not created by the conduct of the applicant. Next slide, please. I have highlighted here the economic hardship criteria, the criteria that are going to be identified in yellow. There was some staff interpretation applied to that in terms of an alternative compliance with consultation with our attorney. And I will go through that more specifically when we reach that criteria. Next slide, please. So subsection 3.A, that the, oops. Sorry, I was seeing something else on my screen. 1 second. The amount paid for the resource, the date of purchase, and the party from whom it was purchased, including a description of the relationship, if any, between the owner and the persons from whom the resource was purchased. They have provided a narrative regarding that in their economic letter, as well as the documents of purchase record in 1952 and then 1977. Next slide. 3B, that the annual gross and net income, if any, from the resource for the previous 4 years, itemized operating and maintenance expenses for the previous 4 years, and depreciation deduction and annual cash flow before and after debt services, if any, during the same period. They did provide 4 years of income and expense statements from 2020 through 2023, as well as those from previous years of 1998 through 2005. 3C, the remaining balance on any mortgage or financing secured by the resource and annual debt service, if any, during the prior 4 years. The applicant does not have outstanding mortgage on this property. The loan statement for this property is related to a COVID loan statement, which was provided to the commission. 3D, real estate taxes for the previous 4 years and assessed value of the resource according to the 2 most recent assessed valuations. The real estate taxes through 2020 through 2023 were provided and found adequate by staff. Economic hardship. All appraisals obtained within the previous 3 years by the owner in connection with the purchase, financing, or ownership of the resource. Appraisals were not attained by the applicant in the last 3 years, so this was not applicable and was not provided. The current fair market value of the resource at the time the application is filed. This was provided based on the El Paso County Assessor's information as of May 2nd, 2024. Item 3G, the form of ownership or operation of the resource. This was provided with those purchase records, as well as some information in the economic hardship letter. And then any state or federal tax income returns on or relating to the resource for the previous 2 years, that was provided for 2021 and 2022. Next, we have item 5 of 170409.5. The criteria have been deemed complete by staff, and we'll go through each of those individually as well. Item A, a report from a licensed engineer or architect with experience in historic restoration or rehabilitation as to the structural soundness of the resource and its suitability for restoration or rehabilitation. This was provided through the economic hardship letter as well as the structural evaluation letter discussed under the demolition requirements. NES also provided a structural statement from a design professional perspective regarding the economic hardship from restoration. The applicant provided in their economic hardship letter narrative descriptions in terms of the estimated cost to repair each of these cabins based on the structural engineer's evaluation. The property had received competitive bids regarding repairs to the cabins, with some of those closely mimicking what was recommended that would need to occur to each of those cabins with regards to the structural engineer's letter. The applicant then used that information to generate a couple different cost estimate alternatives for the project. Staff deemed this complete as fulfilling the intent of that code item with regards to estimates provided for full repair based on the structural engineer's professional judgment. Next slide. The estimated market value of the resource in the current condition and after completion of the proposed alteration, and in the case of proposed demolition after rehabilitation of the resource for continued use. Information regarding this was provided in the economic hardship response. Next slide. And item D, the case of proposed demolition, the testimony of an architect, developer, real estate consultant, appraiser, or other real estate professional experienced in historic restoration or rehabilitation as to the economic feasibility of rehabilitation or reuse of the existing structure. This was deemed complete based on NES's structural statement. Next. The unfeasibility of new construction, of the unfeasibility of new construction around, above, or below the resource. This was provided in the NES structural statement as well as the economic hardship statement, wherein a diagram was created that outlines the areas that are impacted. And that's on the next slide. I'm going to go through that really quick. This diagram was included showing setbacks that exist on the property due to the Creek Walk Trail on the north side, city sewer easement for utilities on that north side, as well as on the south side, the floodway overlay in terms of what is allowed per FEMA, and then the green willow tree is a significant, is the namesake of this property, and its critical root zone is also estimated on here as an area to limit disturbances during. Back to the demolition criteria. The other submittal requirement was the applicant's plans if the demolition is approved. No removal or demolition shall be considered if plans for the use of the property after demolition are not provided. Such a plan should be in accordance with any adopted design guidelines. The applicant has provided those plans. Next slide, please. This is the site plan showing proposed 4 duplexes on the north side of the property, as well as proposed landscaping. In their statement, they did share that the location of this was determined by the floodway regulations, the existing easements on the property, as well as a desire to preserve those existing heritage trees adjacent to the roadway. Here we have elevations of the structures on the north and south side. They have selected materials that are compatible with the existing structures that are to be retained on the property. And I will go through pictures of those. Another picture here showing the west visible from the street as well. Next slide. Just for expediency, I did not share each of those elevations for each of the structures, but those were shown in the packet, and we can flip through those in greater detail if that's the request of the commission. The applicant is proposing white vinyl siding and the garage door and a garage door similar to what is shown in this image. These materials are meant to be compatible with those adjacent structures to remain. They have also shared the windows that they are proposing for the structures on this image. And next slide. As well as doors, including sliding glass doors, vehicular garage doors, and the residential exterior door. They have selected shingles that are compatible with the color and appearance of those existing currently on the property and the structures to remain. And then they have shared representative imagery for what they want the lighting and railing to look like. Of note, the light fixture, when it would go through final review with staff, we would confirm that it would look like this, but also be dark sky compliant. The next criteria is feasible alternatives to demolition, including but not limited to abatement of the immediate threat through repair, securing the premises through security fencing or other measures, stabilization, and limited demolition. Once again, I am showing the diagram the applicant submitted. Building elsewhere on the site is not feasible due to these easements and encumbrances in the floodway. They also submitted a statement that securing the site and other measures that are mentioned are not preservation measures and would not result in a more usable site in the future, and therefore would not protect the resource from further deterioration, and therefore are not preferred by the applicant. If demolition is approved, proof that the owner has the financial ability demonstrated by appropriate documentary evidence to complete the proposed plans for the property. Next slide, please. The applicant has provided a financial ability statement. In this statement, they did share that because of the property's location within the floodway, as well as the lack of ability to show a business model that was making money within the recent history, that securing a loan to rehab the building would not be possible, as well as they are not able to secure a loan or a statement at this time that they could do the proposed improvements until such time as they have some approvals from the city, so that they can have assurances to the bank for the ability to do that project. So there is a little bit of a catch-22 with this criteria, which is why staff deemed this application complete because of those statements. Next slide. We did not receive any written public comments for this property, so we do not have any to share here. Staff does not have any recommendations. The next slide is our motion language. With that, we do have our city attorney, Austin, on the line, and we have asked him to give some guidance in terms of, because we do not see an application type like this all the time, just some recommendations, some legal advice for reviewing this application. Thank you.
Thanks, Aaron. Great job. Can you guys hear me all right? Some nods. All right, cool. Well, I'm Austin. I'm filling in for Katie today while she's away on her honeymoon. I work with Jeff and Katie in the attorney's office. I'm happy to be with you all tonight. So as Aaron mentioned, we got some questions on sort of how these applications are processed and sort of the HPC's role in that application process. And we just wanted to take a couple minutes to go through that. So this is a quasi-judicial application, meaning that the HPC's role is to act as an impartial judge and determine whether the application meets the approval criteria in Chapter 1704, which Aaron just went through. And in my view, I think that really means that the commission is going to determine tonight whether the application has demonstrated an economic hardship. And Aaron went through those 5 factors in determining an economic hardship in the code. And so I think that's the main consideration before the HPC tonight. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions now, but just wanted to make you aware that I'm here in the meeting. If you have any legal questions throughout, happy to answer those.
Okay, thank you. Is that the end of staff presentation? Thank you very much. Very thorough. I appreciate you going through step by step on both the hardship and the general demolition requirements from city code. That's very helpful for us. Okay. Our next step then is to see commissioners. Do you have any questions for staff on their presentation?
I just have one, and that is we're just deciding on the demolition. We're not, if we vote to approve the demolition, we're not voting to approve the development plan, just that there is one submitted. Is that correct?
Austin's nodding his head. Yes, that's correct. The minor development plan will be reviewed by the Planning Commission.
Correct. It's just a recommendation tonight on that demolition application.
Then I have a question for you, because the way I read the code is that we also have to approve the proposed structure and that it meets design guidelines within the district. Is that not correct? Just
Yeah,
the design structure.
That's a great question. So that is one of the criteria that the applicant must show at the time of demolition, that the proposal will meet generally the design guidelines. And so that is part of the consideration tonight to determine whether the application has shown that the new plan will meet the design guidelines. But to be clear, nothing in the application tonight is related to site plan. And it's not binding on that site plan determination. That will be before the planning commission and then ultimate decision by the city council. So even though they're very intertwined in some ways because of that criteria you mentioned, the fact that the applicant kind of has to show a little bit more than you would, and in most cases at this stage, at the demolition stage, they've got to show you what's coming next. But that next step, even though they've got to show it here, will not be approved by HPC. That will be through the site plan process. Does that make sense, kind of?
No, I'm afraid not. Isn't HPC responsible for the exterior design, that it meets structural guidelines for the district, irresponsive of how it's laid out on the site plan? It's about the exterior that is exposed to the street. Is that not the purview of the Historic Preservation Commission?
Yeah, I think it is in regards to just the demolition though. So for instance, when you're looking at the application tonight, you're looking at the application materials before you to see if the application materials demonstrate that the plan, not the site plan, but just the general proposed plan for the future, is right now in conformance with the design guidelines. So in a sense, this is sort of the opportunity for HPC to determine whether that plan is in conformance with those design guidelines. But the HPC doesn't have the authority to bind the applicant at the site plan stage, for instance, to say how the building's laid out and what sort of materials are used. At least that's the way I read the code.
So on the proposal to have it 37 in height, 37, that's not something we're approving. It's not our purview.
Correct. That will be a determination at site plan with the planning commission.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So then exterior materials, windows, doors, roof line is not the purview of HPC. That will go to planning commission to determine?
Correct. They'll be the ones to actually apply the site plan criteria as it's submitted in that application. And so tonight, the HPC is looking at general conformance with the plan. So generally, if they build out as they have shown in the application, does that generally meet the design guidelines? That kind of makes sense.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. I'm still not sure I'm totally clear, but as we discuss, maybe things will become clearer for me. Thank you. Any other questions for staff? Okay, at this point, I'd like to invite the applicant and any consultants you have with you or that are representing you to either add additional information or expand upon information that you would like to share with this commission. Make sure you introduce yourself and share where your address is that you're living. Who would like to start? Do you want to start in-house or virtual? In-house? Okay.
Good evening. My name is Chris Lieber, and I'm with NES. I'm also joined here by Kim Johnson, also part of our NES team. Also want to acknowledge Greg Haruth, who is owner of one of the owners of the property, is joining us remotely, and he will be starting out with some opening remarks in just a moment. We also have other members of the family here tonight as well. So again, we're delighted. Thank you for the opportunity to share information. Very appreciative of staff's presentation, and there are a couple things obviously we would like to add. We're going to move, I think, fairly quickly, but want to spend some time really diving into the economic hardship piece. As you recall, we were before you. It's been several months now, but a considerable amount of time and effort has been placed into really, I would say, filling in some of the gaps and requests for additional information that you had as board, and also that came from staff. So with that, what I'd like to do is again introduce Greg Haruth. And Greg, if you'd want to start us out this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Greg Harith. My sister Evelyn Wagner and mother Beverly Harith are there with you. We are representing 328 Manitou Avenue, the Green Willow Motel and Cottages. I currently reside in Virginia. Evelyn is in Colorado Springs, and Beverly is in Manitou Springs. So again, I'd also like to say thank you for the opportunity to come before you. I'll give you the what we call the bottom line up front. We are here to request the demolition of the existing 110-plus-year-old motel buildings and for replacement by new rental duplexes. The objective is to transition from what we've experienced as a higher risk summer motel business to a lower risk regular annual rental on the property. This is a family-owned business. We've been here for over 70 years. Our grandparents purchased the motel back in 1952. My grandfather died in 64. We moved to the motel in 70 and lived there through high school graduation and beyond. Our parents eventually took over ownership and management and running the motel business from my grandmother, and they ran that up until 2016. At that time, our parents were 78 years old and having a harder time working 7 months a year for 7 days a week. Evelyn and I agreed to take over the operation of the motel business, and that's when things transformed significantly. I'd like to at least offer the reason for that big transformation, because I think it's relevant to the economic hardship package that we'll be presenting in a few. Our grandparents and parents both lived on the property. They were there for the 7 months that the business was open, as well as the time off. They were there 7 days a week, 10, 12, 14-hour days during that time frame. But the fact that they lived there and the office was actually in their home allowed them to minimize external staff costs dramatically. That's how they were able to run the business for as long as they did and see a reasonable profit off of the business. When Evelyn and I took over the business in 2016, we were not able to do the same thing. We were unable to live on the property because of our family circumstances. So we were, what we shifted to do was to have managers living on the property. As you can imagine, that necessitated quite a bit higher staff costs, having people other than family cover the 7 months, 7 days a week, 10, 12, 14-hour days. That dramatically increased our expenses. The buildings and the property have aged out. The maintenance costs went up dramatically. Also, each year we seem to find something very large that we ended up having to pay for. So the differences, I think, will play out. Aspect of Evelyn and I's management of the property, unfortunately, over a 5-year period, 2017 to 2021, we actually experienced significant losses, over $239,000, which is about $47,000 loss per year. We could know, despite our best efforts and trying to keep the family business afloat, we just could not continue to pour that much money into the business. So we closed permanently after the 2021 season. From a business perspective, when you buy into a business, you move into a business, you expect at a certain point in time to start making a profit and start making some money from your efforts. I will note that since 2016, the Green Willow LLC has provided no draws to Evelyn or I. We have over 4,000 plus hours devoted to trying to run this business, and we have received absolutely no income from doing that. So that puts us in our current position of what can we do to go forward? How can we transition our family-owned business, our family-owned property into something that is profitable? One of the proposals that have been sent to us was, well, what about selling the property? Well, why don't you just sell the property and walk away? Let me describe what a sale would look like. I'm going to propose $1 million. That's what the El Paso County market value is. That's about half of what a comparable business and land sale in the surrounding area. I did research on that, and a comparable cost or price for that property would be $2 million. But I'm going to go with $1 million. If someone came and said, we want to buy your property for $1 million, we're going to get a business loan for 25 years, great favorable rate, 8% loan. The loan repayment is going to be about $96,000 per year. In order to get that, secure that loan, they would need to show financials. Unfortunately, what we would be providing is 5 years of $47,000 per year loss. Let's say they decided they were going to operate the business like our parents and grandparents did, and they were going to live on the property and significantly decrease their expenses. One of the best years our parents had was about a $45,000 profitable season. If you take the $45,000 and you subtract off the $96,000 to service the loan, these new owners are operating the business at a $51,000 per year loss. Not feasible, not sustainable. Most likely, we're not going to sell the property. The next idea was to refurbish the property and try to bring it back up to modern standards and make it more profitable. Unfortunately, it's a very similar situation. Evelyn and I would need to go to a financial institute, show them the records, $47,000 loss per year. If we did a refurbishment, the way I look at it is we would replace the approximate $40,000 per season cost for maintenance and upkeep with servicing a loan. That would actually change from $40,000 per year to $77,000 per year to service a loan to refurbish the property. Again, not viable. We prefer not going into bankruptcy, trying to run the motel. One other aspect that I think is extremely important on trying to even consider refurbishing the property, the structural engineering report was very clear. The close proximities of the trees to the buildings is causing disruption to the foundation and the frames. The green willow tree, the 350-year-old green willow tree, is the worst case. The roots have pushed up the foundation, the porches. There is one porch that has a 5-inch angle into the building. The green willow would have to be removed for us to refurbish at least 2, if not 3 of the cottages. That is not a possibility for us. I will not move forward with doing anything before I take down that green willow tree. So that kind of puts us at that's our situation, and how do we get out of that? How do we move forward and try to find a profitable way forward? What we'd again like to do is request demolition of the older buildings and redevelop the property into annual rentals. We would like to transition from a high-risk summer rental to low-risk annual rentals. We do intend on keeping the park-like setting across the front of the property. We specifically didn't try to optimize and shove as many buildings in the property as we could. We purposely left the whole front of the property as open and park-like as we could, with the intent of providing that to the tenants who live on the property. So that's kind of a big picture on what our objectives are. Chris, if I'll hand it over to you, Chris is going to go through and present the package that we have worked on over the last 2 years, and hopefully we're able to provide the information that helps you make a decision. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Greg. And if I may, if it's possible to pull our presentation up, I would appreciate it. Thank you. Great. If I get next slide, please. Oh, thank you. Is that better? Okay, great. If I could, next slide, please. So of course, you'll hear us talk about really 2 things this evening. First is the MCAC, and I want to point out that would involve demolition of really 6 buildings. What's envisioned is redevelopment to include 4 new duplexes. And really the rationale for this, as Greg attested, is restoration to economic hardship. And then we want to also talk about a little bit about the minor development plan to address some of the questions I think you had earlier. Next, please. We spent a lot of time really looking at site and the site context and trying to understand that. I won't go into a lot of detail here other than to really talk about, we've spent a fair amount of time trying to understand the constraints on this site that contribute to the economic hardship, that limit, if you will, redevelopment possibilities. And these are just simple realities. And so if I could have the next slide, please. If we look at some of the existing zoning, and this gets to the question of kind of compatibility with the proposed minor development plan. We've got a mix of zoning surrounding this particular parcel. It has had a history of kind of a mixed use and commercial uses. We've got high density residential immediately adjacent to the west, residential to the north, and commercial, if you will, to the south and east. You're very familiar with the existing land uses around that. We obviously acknowledge that within that surrounding area and this parcel, we have the villas sub-district. From a historic perspective, it's important to note the city trail along the north boundary. And that, interestingly enough, that parcel to the north is not included in the villa sub-district. And then, of course, the multifamily, the condominiums or townhomes immediately to the west, which represent a redeveloped property. It's been done fairly recently. And then a variety of other sources or land uses, if you will, to the south. Transportation access to the site is very simple. Really, two options. One is the Creek Walk Trail along the west, and then access across the bridge from Manitou Avenue. So the majority of folks experience this property really from Manitou Avenue as they're driving along the corridor. Site is relatively flat with one large significant exception, and that is the creek, Fountain Creek, that runs along the southern boundary. So next, please. I mentioned some of the challenges with this site and those realities. First and foremost, approximately just shy of 50% of the site is encumbered either by floodway, by sanitary sewer easement, by setbacks, by trail, and so on and so forth. So that really leaves a small portion of the site. But I think another thing that's also very important to point out, and the diagram in the lower left helps really illustrate that there are two important differentiations. A floodway really talks about there's a restriction there that no buildings can be built within the floodway. That's where the water actively moves. But it's just as important to note that the entire site is actually subject to the floodplain. And while buildings can be erected within the floodplain outside of the floodway, that does drive things such as where habitable space can be. And so that's part of what's driving the development plan, which I'll talk about as well. The other piece I think that's worth mentioning here, we had explored a variety of different scenarios from a site plan perspective and trying to push the units as far to the north as possible. But the sanitary sewer easement really precludes us from being able to push those any further back. So next, please. All right. It's been mentioned tonight that the property owner did opt out of the district. This is originally. However, it is our understanding and is certainly staff's interpretation that the MCAC is a requirement, and that's due to the demolition, and that's what ties those together, and we acknowledge that. So we're really seeking your recommendation here tonight, knowing that both Planning Commission and City Council are next steps. This is when we look at this from a land use and from an architecture perspective and history perspective, it truly is somewhat of an outlier within the district. It is the site, we understand, of a former state. What's interesting, though, is this site does not emulate the features that we normally would think of within the Villas sub-district. I think of the Briarhurst, places like Rockledge or Craftwood. However, it is a 1909 cottage auto tourist complex, but the property is not listed. If you look at historic guidelines, is not actually listed as a contributor within the Villas subdistrict, which I think is worth noting. It isn't for the reasons for inclusion, though, would be proximity to the other estate properties, as well as its general time frame of construction. What also we found kind of surprising is that when you look at the section of the guidelines that refers to auto tourism, this property was not identified as one of those contributors. So again, that's part of the context that we found rather interesting and I think important for your considerations this evening. Next, please. I think Aaron did a nice job of identifying, obviously, which buildings would be proposed to be kept on site, which buildings are proposed to be removed. A couple of things I do want to point out. Greg had done a nice job talking about the green willow. That is that green, called the little blob cloud area there on the slide. And if you'll notice, several of the cabins that are most affected by the root structure of the green willow are shown there, and it makes it very difficult to do any kind of renovation or repair without impacting the green willow. And the green willow, I think, is very much a contributing element to the quality along the streetscape and the history of the site, as well as the motor court of the feel. The units that you see that run east-west, that is where the new townhomes would be proposed, as well as the unit that would be removed there on the north edge, on the right up against the trail. And of course, there are 2 units that would be remaining. Next, please. I think this does a kind of a better job of really showing the importance of the motor court and that quality along Manitou Avenue that this proposal, again, really strives to protect and to retain, as well as retaining the green willow. So next, please. We have a number of photos here. We'll move quickly, but again, I think this is to really talk about the quality of the views. And what's important to note is that what you see in this photo, largely buildings that would be retained under the proposal. Obviously, the bridge, the 2 residences on the left. One on the left, and then one that's kind of in the background on the right-hand side. You can see some of the distance that it's set back from Manitou. And this is, of course, taken at the entrance. So next, please. This also kind of moving along here. You can see some of the foliage there in the front, in the foreground. That is proposed to all remain. And again, it's that motor court space and those recreation kind of spaces out front that really add to the quality and I think to the character of the site. Next. Another great view. You can see the willow there on the far left-hand side, kind of dwarfs everything else on the site. And I think what's important is that again, the units that are being proposed, when we talk about some of those general kind of requirements, this idea of protecting the motor court feel, would be located in the very background of this particular slide. So next. Again, just real quickly showing some of the valuable spaces, outdoor spaces that would be retained along the creek and along the frontage. Next, please. Another shot of that kind of idyllic landscape. Next. These are the units that are proposed to be removed. These are the units that are kind of in that east-west configuration. And it's also the footprint of these units, largely, it's in a very similar space where the proposed new townhomes would be located. Next. You can see this is the bathhouse. This is located at the back, very back of the site. That would the upper left hand that is proposed for demolition, as well as unit 16 here in the lower right hand corner. Okay, next, please. This also is now kind of, you're in the interior of the motor court, and again, you can see the various units that are identified there. These are also proposed to be removed. And the next slide. One more. These are units 10 through 12 that will be removed. These are the units that would remain. You can see one of the common elements between all of these is the white kind of horizontal siding, the green roofs, you can see the various roof lines that are there. Also the existing windows on these buildings as well. So next, please. All right. Want to talk just real quickly touch upon the structural engineers report, RMG, evaluated the buildings, and whether we're talking about floors, exterior walls, the porches, or the roof. In our packet, we've included a lot of detail around that. In essence, when you look at the construction and the existing floors, they're very uneven. There's been a lot of movement over time. Yes, some of that caused by the green willow, but all of the units exhibit some of those issues. A lot of things are out of plumb. Again, root damage, and also a lot of challenges with the roof as well. So next, please. The structural engineer identified most of the buildings as being in poor condition, inadequate materials and construction methods, whether it's just even the spacing of some of the existing structural elements. When many from a foundation perspective, many of the foundations again have heaved or are moving. We have floor joists that are all rotting out. All of those things contribute to the challenges that are there. But poor performance of structures, sloping floors, plumb walls, bending and bowing of roof and floor framing members would be very expensive to remedy, were all identified by RMG. Next, please. Right. What I'd like to do at this point is turn the presentation over back to Greg to provide a little bit more detail on the economic hardship. So, Greg, please.
Good evening, folks, again. So I'll start on chart 21. The numbers down below give more than I think we requested. It actually shows the entire time that Evelyn and I managed the Green Willow Cottages. Just for clarity, Beverly owns the land and the buildings. Evelyn and I started the Green Willow Cottages LLC to run the motel business. The numbers you see down below are from 2016 to present. The losses that we incurred on the very bottom are the maintenance costs per year. The key contributing factors for the economic hardship, one, the structural engineering report, I think, provided a lot of detail regarding the 110-year-old buildings and the problems that we deal with on a year-to-year basis. We go in and fix things, and the next year we find other things that have gone bad, and it's been the case each year. Number two is the restricted property. As Chris alluded to, when our grandparents first purchased this property, you could build just about anywhere. Now we've lost 50% of the property in which we can actually do building. We've got the floodway in the front where we cannot build. The back is split in half with the new requirement by the city to go from a 5-foot sewer easement to a 22-foot sewer easement. And finally, the rehabilitation costs are similar to what it would cost to actually build brand new buildings on this site. And we found that one is not profitable, one we have the chance of becoming profitable. So that's the path we would like to follow. We were asked to provide extensive financial reports. We believe we've shown that with the major losses. And again, I brought this up earlier, but that last note is that the LLC has not been able to pay out any money to the owners, Evelyn and I, even though we've put in over 4,000 hours at least between the two of us since 2016. We'd like to eventually get to the point where we are making some money and not continue losing it. Next chart, please. So we did want to provide a refurbishment estimation. I provided 3 methodologies. One was as requested at the prelim meeting to look at the Cottonwood Court. They were approved for demolition based on economic hardship. We were able to get some of their information. I took their estimates and applied standard inflation rates and then subtracted off our fewer cottages. And we came out with very similar estimates for refurbishment, somewhere in the $700,000 to $800,000. I took the cost of the expenses that we've incurred for the damage that we've fixed and amplified that with the structural engineering report. And that brought the number up again to similar, $900,000 to $1 million. The third methodology was taking, if we were to build brand new, there's 4,400 square feet of building space. If we were to build that brand new at $300 a square foot, that would be over $1 million. So those are all the refurbishment costs that we would have to deal with if we tried to do this. The most important factor is we would have to cut down the green willow tree to save at least 2, if not 3 of the buildings over there by the green willow. We're just not willing to do. Next chart, please. The other way I wanted to take a look at this was I took 2 of the years that we managed the property, Evelyn and I took a look at the costs and the income. And what I found was that if we did refurbishment, we would replace the annual expenses of refurbishment, which are approximately $40,000 on average, with the servicing the debt, approximately $800,000, $72,000 per year. Unfortunately, all that did was transition our average annual loss from $47,000 up to $60,000. Again, not a good business model. Next chart, please. As we've identified, we only have 14 cottages. We only have room in those for trying to think of the right word. Twin beds or full beds, sorry. We don't have the room, even if we did refurbishment, to expand those rooms out and make them bigger. They are very small rooms. We can't really compete with the Days Inns, the Holiday Inns, the Quality Inns, the chain motels that are in the area. So even with refurbishment, we're still renting out very small units. We showed you the restrictions on the property. And one other note, we've looked at Manitou Springs, and what we've seen is almost every other one of the Auto Court motel owners realized what we've realized, and they have closed down, they've been demolished, and they've been redeveloped into other things. Most recently, the Dillon was sold to the city to be turned into a parking lot. The Cottonwood was torn down and replaced with a Days Inn. There's just a number of other motels that used to be in Manitou that are now gone and have been redeveloped because of the competition in the surrounding area with the chain motels. It's unfortunate, but we realize that that's where we are. And next chart, please. The other thing we were asked to do is to look at possible options of what we could do with the property. We've talked pretty extensively about reopening the motel, either with or without refurbishment. We as a family will not reopen the business. We can't afford loss. We can't afford bankruptcy. We're just not going to go down that path. I think we've proven to ourselves definitively that we just can't operate a small business, a small motel. It's just too high risk. The next possibility was, what else could we do? One thought someone brought up was, well, turn the cottages into room for small businesses. Unfortunately, that's not possible. We'd have to refurbish them, and the costs in that would take us up to refurbishing for a motel. We don't know that business. We're just not interested in trying to pursue that business. So that's not viable. Next chart, please. Repurposing the motel units for long-term rentals was another thought put forward. That's not possible because of the floodway. You cannot have living units on the ground floor, so that's not even an option. That and the fact that the living units are way below standard living units. They're just way too small, and most of them don't have kitchens, so that would work. They're not insulated. So it would take a major refurbishment for them to even get to that. And then we can't do it anyway because we're in the floodway. The next was to build duplexes in front of the motel units. We've shown the area in the floodway. That's not viable. We did our plan that we brought to the city last fall, showed building across the very back of the property where we would have left the motel units alone, except for number 16 in the back. Unfortunately, we were informed at that time, which we were a bit surprised with from the utility folks, that they wanted a 22-foot easement, which knocked down our ability to build duplexes across the back of the property. Really, that left us with the only option left is to demolish the motel units and put the duplexes across the middle of the property. I did want to note that the property is not zoned for us to sell off any of those. We would have to sell the property in its entirety. So our intent is not to build units that we can sell off piecemeal. We hope and plan to keep the business and the property in the family for the long term. We just would like to turn it into a profitable venture. And finally, the last one on there is the last option available to us is to retract the request for redevelopment and just leave the property to deteriorate. We just don't have the funds to try to repair and keep the place up. So that would be the unfortunate case if we can't find a profitable way to move forward. That's my portion of the economic hardship. Chris, I'll turn it back over to you.
Great. Chris Lieber, once again, for the record. Next slide, please. We're, as Greg alluded to, the family is ready to look at the future. And we were actually excited to in Manitou, and specifically some of the goals and objectives. I'm sorry, I think my mic is coming and going. Thank you. And so I want to touch upon a couple of these. First, in terms of preservation, when we think about land use, we think about the changes in the future, this idea of balancing preservation and historic cultural resources. We're excited about being able to, in many ways, preserve what's best of the motor court, and that is all of that land on the frontage, which is really visible and is part of that experience. Also look at materials in terms of textures and colors that are, again, similar to what's there today. Encouraging a diverse range of housing types to support safe and affordable and accessible housing options. That is one of the objectives here for the project. Next, please. Provide a balance of mix of land uses to meet the needs of residences and businesses. And we believe the proposal does that. Promote reinvestment and redevelopment in the city's gateways and along Manitou Avenue. And we believe this is also compatible with that goal. Again, the property is identified as a gateway mixed use in Plan Manitou. Next, please. And there's yet another goal around reinvestment and resiliency. This talks about repurposing buildings, thinking about infill and redevelopment on existing lots. And again, all of these are compatible. Next, please. So what is proposed, really transitioning what are today seasonal rentals or were up until the business closed, and replacing those with annual rentals to provide housing. Again, in general, to maintain a similar look and feel, not only in terms of, I think it's easy to think about materials, but also in terms of proximity to Manitou Avenue. Also, I think it's important that to note that there's not a proposal to maximize development of the site. Again, trying to be respectful of that. Provide rental options for at least 83% of the Manitou Springs community. And you'll see that graphic identified there in terms of a number of beds per unit, 2 to 3 bedrooms. We also previously had talked about security and privacy fencing, but still providing access down to the access along the creek walk. And then also very importantly, we recognize that with any project, there can be impacts to mature trees. And so what's proposed, I won't go into detail on that, but is adding that, because again, it's about preserving that character, but perhaps most importantly, preserving the green willow. Next, please. Again, these are the units that would remain. So you can see the character there. And of course, they are similar to the units that are proposed for demolition. Next, please. Note the white siding and the green roof. So what's proposed is to maintain, if you will, to the degree we can, a similar feel to the property, retain that park-like setting out in front, construct 3 duplexes where the motel units were, and then 1 additional on the northeast corner. We're retaining those existing single-family residents, retaining the motor court circulation pattern, retaining the gravel access and parking, retaining the green willow. In the process, improving emergency access over what it is today, and really with a goal of focusing views on Pikes Peak and Fountain Creek and maintaining easy access to Creek Walk. Next. A couple of things I want to point out on this slide. This is in the packet. This is actually, if you look at the garage doors, I want to emphasize this, that because the units couldn't be pushed on the very back, what that enabled the design to do is that access into the garages will actually come in from the north, because we also felt it was important that we don't have garage doors facing Manitou Avenue. So that if there was a silver lining in not being able to have the units at the very north end, we think that's one of those pluses. But again, using that the white horizontal siding, again, similar roof and gutters, covered porches. One of the things that is very desirable is the rooftop deck. I do want to point out from a building height perspective, we would love these units to be a whole story, if you will, lower. But the reality is, because this is in the floodplain, that first level cannot be habitable space. And so that space underneath is being used as a garage. Think of this as a park under, if you will, and then living space up above. It's also very similar to the units that are immediately to the west. They have been built in a similar fashion. Next, please. This is one of the side units, but you can see the stairs kind of coming out from the unit. Next, please. I'll go through these. I want to, if you can keep going, please. I want to make sure we get to the slide with the stairs in the front. Here we go. Again, if you see the stair configuration, these porches and the stairs that go to both sides, that is also very similar to the type of architecture and egress that you see on the units immediately to the west. So next, please. Great. One of the units, just because of room and space, you'll see that the stair configuration is been different or shifted. So we do have some variety between the various units. Next, please. Okay, I'll let you keep going here. All right. So I guess at this point, Greg and I are available for questions. We've got other experts here. Kim certainly be happy to answer any questions, but we look forward to your consideration tonight, and thank you for your time.
Thank you all for all of your thorough presentation of materials tonight. So commissioners, what questions, what additional information do you need from the applicants that are not part of the packet or that need clarification from the packet?
I just, excuse me, I just have one. The buildings that you're retaining. Okay. The two buildings, the 1-story and the 2-story, will they have a lot of work to be done on them, or are they pretty safe?
If I may, I may defer that to Greg.
They are, both of those were built in the 1970s. They actually have good solid foundations. They have a crawl space underneath where the heating unit is. So both of those buildings are in great shape. And part of what we will use is the income from those to help offset the costs as we go through the build process. So they will remain pretty much as they are now.
Thank you. Just a comment about saving the green willow tree. That's very important. I'm really glad you have that in your plans.
Thank you.
Other questions from commissioners?
I just wanted to mention that in the design guidelines, the Green Willow Motel actually is listed as a notable and significant structure in that area, along with Briarhurst, Red Crags, Craftwood Inn. And in fact, they mention a special paragraph why it is significant, because of course it's in 1909 as the original buildings were. And one of the last remaining examples of that early motor court auto tourism development in Manitou Springs. And with small scale buildings and park-like setting, I'm reading what's here, and character, the Green Willow is a distinctive resource within the sub-district and for the interpretation of the historic district as a whole. So it actually is listed in the design guidelines as significant.
Thank you for that
I
clarification.
just wanted to point that out.
Thank you. I did have a couple of questions. Did I miss where in the packet was the cost estimate for the entire proposed new build project? That I couldn't quite put my finger on it. I saw something about part of it, the prep, the demolition, but not for the new builds themselves. What page was that on? Since we are required to assess financial ability.
If I can answer that, I don't know exactly where it is in our documentation. The contractor that we're working with has given us an estimate of approximately $250 to $300 per square foot. And that puts it at between 3.5 and 4.0 million for the construction.
Okay.
And that's very early estimate. We're not at the stage where we have detailed architectural drawings yet. We were waiting to get past this stage before we requested our architect to give us the detailed architectural drawings that we would then hand over to our construction contractor, general contractor, for a more extensive and detailed pricing.
Okay, understandable that you wouldn't have the exact numbers on that. But that gives me a rough idea. And you've said that the financial institutions you've talked to were not willing to make a commitment or give you much of a idea of their commitment at this time, at this point in your is that your plan for financial resource for this? Is it a loan, basically commercial loan then?
Yes, we have been in touch with 3 providers. We're working closely with 2 of them. We're, I'll say, hedging our bets on positive path forward. So we've asked them, what will we need to provide at the next step? We're in the process of accumulating the necessary financials to be able to provide them. And as you've said, that they're a little hesitant to extend resources to start reviewing financial packages without us knowing that we can go forward. So it's a multi-step process, but we are leaning as far forward as we can. We've already reached out, we've talked to them, we've got their criteria, and we'll continue to work with them as we go through this. So we're as close to being ready to detail out the finances as we can as soon as we get a definitive answer.
And I assume it's your intent, we haven't delved into this, to build all 4 units kind of at once, or are you going to sequence the development to help
Yes.
finance?
The best answer I can give you on that, ma'am, is yes. We need to get detailed estimates from our general contractor. We need to find out what the banking terms are. One of the banking institutes generally deals with half of what we need for the whole project. So going through them, we might do a phased approach. We just don't have the hard numbers right now to know how we would need to phase this if that's how it works out.
Okay, thank you for clarification. Anything else from?
I have another
Commissioners?
question. Do you plan to tailor your rents as affordable, as much needed affordable housing in Manitou Springs, or will it be more at the luxury end?
I've been monitoring. Oh, go ahead, Chris.
I think first of all, one of the goals of this project is to keep this project as affordable as possible. And I think it's about trying to control construction costs, control those expenses throughout so that rents can remain reasonable. But Greg, if you want to talk about that in maybe a little more detail.
So I've been monitoring the Manitou Springs rental market for about 2.5 years. What I've found is that the majority of the time, there's 6 to 10 places available for rent. They only stay on the market for weeks to 1 month, maybe 2. So the rentals do move fairly quickly in Manitou. During that time, the majority of the 6 to 10, if there were 10 of them, 6 or 7 of them were 600 to 800 square feet. And those were renting from anywhere to $1,200 to $1,500. There were rarely rentals that were in the size that we're trying to build to. They would jump from let's say 1,000 square feet and less up to the 2,500 to 3,500 square foot places. And those are full houses and much pricier. So we believe that the rental units that we're attempting to build fit a niche that Manitou doesn't have very much of. Again, there might be 1 or 2. In fact, I looked just yesterday on Zillow, and of the 6 properties that are for rent, they're all below 1,000 square feet. So I think we're able to provide properties that Manitou desperately needs. That one diagram showed that 83% of the occupants of Manitou are 1, 2, or 3 person households. 74% of all the households in Manitou are 1 or 2 people. So I hope that we're servicing the majority of residents of Manitou while allowing for small families to be able to live there. One of the great pieces of that property is the front area, the creek, the playground, the fireplace. That's what we're hoping to provide. And I think Chris said it well. We are not trying to build high-end, really high-end duplexes. We want to have reasonable accommodations, nice accommodations, but part of the package is you get to live at your own park. So I think that that brings it into the reasonable housing area.
Thank you. Okay, thank you all very much for answering all of our questions. At this point, we'd like to open it up for public comment. Either comments in support or against the proposal, the proposed application for demolition and redevelopment.
Thank you.
Is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak to this application? One way or the other? No? Okay, then the public hearing is closed. And commissioners, it's time to discuss and arrive at a recommendation, either for or against the proposal. Can I have some comments from commissioners?
Susan, I'm kind of with you on not completely understanding whether we can approve this tonight without, number one, the commitment from a bank, which is one of the requirements. And was there something else? I can't remember. Oh, approving the plan. So without that, I mean, can we even move ahead, or do we have to just automatically continue to next meeting?
Laura, would you mind speaking a little closer to the microphone?
Oh,
I'm
I'm
not sure
sorry.
we're getting all of that for the record. Thank you.
Do any of the commissioners want to speak to that concern, or especially those of you who sat through a previous one of these processes before?
Right. Yeah, I've been through a number. And I think from my standpoint, I don't think we have required the applicants to actually have a loan in place. I think that's not usually realistic. What they need to demonstrate, and I think they have adequately, is that they have a plan for accessing the resources that would be necessary to build
Okay.
the
And they
structure.
have gotten estimates, and I
Yeah.
understand the challenge in
Right.
getting them.
And what was your other question? Was that? That was it.
Oh,
the
do we
plan,
need
yeah.
we need to discuss the design and approve the design,
Right.
correct?
And again, from my
Is-
standpoint, we did one not that long ago on Spring Street. It's not a full-blown like MCAC process. What the code provides is that they have to demonstrate what they're going to replace the demolished structures with, and that those have to be generally compatible with the surroundings. And I think especially as Mr. Lieber's pointed out, because the closest in the vicinity to what will be to the Green Willow is the, whatever those are, to the west,
Oh, the Fountain Creek.
right,
Yeah.
the villas or whatever,
Mhm.
the Fountain Creek, yeah, that we did approve, obviously, when those were built. And they seem to be very compatible with that. It's a very eclectic neighborhood, as we
Yes.
all know.
It
But I
is.
think because the ones directly to the west, that they have sort of patterned what they're going to replace there to those, I think we could clearly make a finding that it's compatible. And I think that's generally all we've done with the demolition request. We don't go through a full-blown MCAC process.
Oh, okay. But the design should be in the character of the resort cabins. I
Should
think
be
that's
in-
what they.
Yeah, in the
said that
character
one.
of the surrounding area.
Right.
It
and-
shouldn't be not compatible with the
Right, right.
neighborhood.
And
Yeah.
I agree with the materials are the same, but the flat roofs I have a problem with, I think, because I don't see any other flat roofs in the neighborhood. Or, I mean, everything is a gabled roof in the existing cabins and in the building next door to the west and in the single-family building to the stone structure all have gabled roofs, and I don't think the flat roof is really appropriate.
And I would think that the, the roofs on the two remaining buildings are rather flat, you know, and, you know, we've had these buildings in Manitou for 110 years. I've been here 36, so I'm not quite that old yet. But I really think that the way they're leaving the older two buildings, the ones in 1970, and using the same kind of materials, so it won't be jarring when you look at it. They got caught in the 22 feet from the sewage line. I mean, there's a lot of things that just won't work, and having the beautiful trees and foundations and old wood, it's just what can you do with it? I'd hate to see it just deteriorate, you know, to a point where you just scrape them off and nothing is done.
Right, right.
So you know, I understand, but since we don't really have a plan, a detailed plan yet, and I'm sure when the architect gets at it, he'll have a lot, or she'll have a lot of ideas about what will blend in, and we're not at that point yet. We're not looking at the design. We're looking that they have a plan, and it'll have to go through all the processes,
Okay.
I think.
Well, then, would we go through a review process after the architects have a
No,
final plan?
because was withdrawn from the district. We can only talk about the demolition, right?
Right,
Yeah,
yeah, okay.
that's
So
why.
it's not, this is not a review, that's
No, it's not
similar.
an
I'm sorry.
MCAC.
Okay. Okay, I think I understand. Thanks.
Any other comments? Commissioner Edmondson, do you have anything you wanted to add at this point to our discussion?
I have no comments.
So I would make an additional comment. I think it's just kind of to give some perspective here. I think it's clear from the amount of material that we have in front of us here that we take demolition of historic structures very seriously. And it is a very heavy lift to get to the point where we finally decide that they have met the code criteria to show lack of economic feasibility unless they demolish the resource. And I think they have clearly demonstrated that here at great length. Nothing's ever going to be completely definitive, but I think that they have met the very high hurdle that we require to demonstrate that it's not economically feasible to not demolish these buildings.
Right, and I agree with that. I just don't agree with the design as it's today.
A $4 million loan, today's rates right now is over $16,000 a month. That would be $3,500 a unit rent in order for them to clear the bar, to make their payments, show to property taxes on enhanced development, the actual retail value, the market value of the properties. So I don't consider that affordable housing. $3,500 a month for a unit is not affordable housing, even for a family, for a two-income family, that's $47,000 a year, I believe. However, one of my concerns is that once we vet something like this,
They move forward with tearing it down. They can't get a loan. Now we have an empty lot. You know, we're dealing with the Crystal Park development, what was originally known as the McLaughlin Lodge. They went through every hoop that you could imagine. Floodplain, which is something that has been taken into consideration here, but building in a floodplain is tremendously challenging on a good day and very expensive. And I don't want to see something happen like what's happened over at what is now Cheyenne Village, and it's standing there empty for sale, including all of the units that they started work on. Some of them don't even have windows in them. So, you know, yes, they've proven the ability not to run the business at a profit because they don't want to do it. And that's just the way it goes. If you're going to run a family business, there's a certain amount of sacrifice it takes to do that. If you're unwilling to make that sacrifice, then you should just either sell the property, or if you're going to tear it down, I think that there should be some sort of guarantee better than, well, we may be kind of talking about this, kind of talk about that kind of thing. It's a little loose, to say the least, but they've proven the guidelines according to guidelines and ordinances. So that's all I'm concerned about.
Yeah, and they're not guidelines. I mean, they are meeting code provisions. This is way different than
Great.
guidelines. So
Great.
I
It'll be
think
an empty
that's
lot and
what
it'll
we
sit there
need
for
to
years,
decide
so.
on, is the code is very clear about what they have to do to demonstrate that it's not economically feasible to keep the structures in place. And I think that's where we are.
Did anybody,
And-
did anybody bother to take a look at the current condition of the buildings after they boarded them up, after they went in and ripped out all the walls and cut out all the floors? That's what I thought.
We are in the discussion portion of the hearing right now.
Okay, yes, presentation's over. We're just discussing among ourselves. I would agree that they have met the requirements by code for demonstrating hardship, financial hardship, and definitely provided all the information that they were almost all except, financial ability to fulfill the plan. Other than that, they have provided the information that is required by code for this. So basically, the way I read code is we are, our job is to recommend approval if all things meet those requirements. I will just put in my 2 cents that I too would like a revised design of the buildings. A flat roof is not consistent with that district. The new construction in there, the villas and the blue skies, they all managed to build commercial properties that rental and other properties that were more consistent with the roof line of the area. But since that is not in our purview, I'm just giving you my opinion. If I hear no other comments, I think we're ready to make have a vote. And the language is, let's see. Can we pull up the language again? Make sure we're stating this correctly.
Yes, Chelsea, thank you.
So I would entertain a motion either for approval or disapproval.
So I would move that we forward to City Council a recommendation for approval of the demolition of structure request at 328 Manitou Avenue based upon the findings that the request meets the review criteria for granting demolition permit as set forth in City Code Section 1704-080 as submitted.
Thank you, Commissioner Nichols. Do I hear a second?
I would do a second.
Thank you, Commissioner Porter. We have a motion and a second to approve sure I'm doing the right one again. I've lost my place. The demolition of structures request for at 328 Manitou Avenue. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Those opposed?
Aye.
I,
No.
I'm not
Okay.
opposed. I'll say aye.
So that motion passes by a 3-2 vote. And we have approved that recommendation. And this is only a recommendation to city council. They still have final say. Thank you all for all your time and work on this.
And can we record that vote so city council knows the vote?
Yes, I will read my notes here for the record. Commissioner Nichols made a motion to forward to City Council approval of the demolition of the structure request and all that language. And then Commissioner Porter seconded that motion. The vote passed 3-2 with that approval recommendation to City Council, with Commissioner Presti or Chair Presti, Commissioner Porter, and Commissioner Nichols voting for it, and Commissioner Edmondson and Vice Chair Keinseth voting against it.
No, I'm voting for it. I'll
Oh,
go for it.
okay.
Yeah, I'll go for it. Sure.
Okay.
So the vote passes 4-1 for the record.
Okay. Thank you. Whew. Take a deep breath. Now on to new business. Thank you all for your patience and attendance tonight. We appreciate it. I don't see any new business. Do we have any?
We do not have any new business at this time. But I have a presentation for the next part.
Okay, then on to other business. Item 5, the staff update of 701 Manitou Avenue construction project progress.
All right, I am going to, well, I've got the Carnegie Library updated here. I'm going to share a quick video actually, just to kind of share the scale of the improvements or the progress towards the ADA improvements for Carnegie Library. So hopefully this works. I tested it before I shared my screen, but let's see. So this is imagery shot by our contractor with some drone footage showing the extent of the work that is being done at the Carnegie Library at this time. The first phase, as you can see here, was a lot of excavation on the property. During the excavation process, we did have archaeologist on site, reviewing everything that was coming out of the ground and making sure there was nothing making sure everything was documented that came out in that first part of the excavation process. The walls that you see built on the outside there are shoring walls that will remain in place. That's part of maintaining some structural stability and enforcing the structural stability of the future additions on that property. They have started to put in some formwork, and I believe yesterday, although I did not go out to the site because it was going to be a very busy day yesterday, they did start some initial pouring out on the site. Yeah, there's lots going on out there. So yesterday was a big pouring day. So I was going to take pictures, but he said, please, if you don't have to be on the site tomorrow, don't, because of all of the work and activity that was happening there. So with that, I'm going to go share some photos here of progress up until this point. The first photo you have on your screen here, and I'm going to tie these to some of the items that have come back to HPC for the MCAC, as well as some that we have reviewed administratively with the help of the chair and vice chair. So this is where there previously was a door in the mechanical room. But this area on, we'll say, the exterior of the building here is being filled in and is part of the area that is being regraded to provide the space for an ADA accessible parking space. So as that, it no longer has the function as a doorway there as per those original plans. We have some marking here on the ground showing where they're roughing in the new mechanical systems. And this is the room where we had brought back to HPC the janitorial closet with the pine wood construction. This commission approved that being removed, and they have been able to move forward with improvements there. With that approval, not only did that allow for the access to that first floor restroom that was very much needed from below, but it also allowed for a slight tweak to the plans where we have the mop sink is on the ground instead of being a utility sink up in the air, which will be a great benefit to facilities moving forward as we continue maintenance and caring for this library for generations to come. The next picture here, even though this picture kind of goes down towards the bottom, to the floor here, these show the concrete walls that were from that previous vault that was there. That was the door to the vault is to remain and be secured in place. However, this area is to become some desks and study carousels for people using the library. The original plans showed the concrete wall of this vault to be removed. However, as we got down in there and we were looking at that concrete, it was determined that that couldn't be removed without destroying the brick on the other side of that concrete wall. So the approved direction on that was to finish these walls like the plans had shown originally, whatever needed to be done to be cohesive with the existing plan and the adjacent walls. Because it's a vault. Yeah. This photo on the screen here shows some waterproofing that was revealed during the excavation phase. You can see on this spot, I'm going to go in a little bit closer here. The contractor did attempt to remove it. However, again, they ran into a similar issue where there was concerns for what removing it would do in terms of the brick that's underneath. And you know, this is at the base of that brick structure. So the recommended direction that's being moved forward with is that they are going to, and it is important to note that the new finish grade will leave that waterproofing revealed in its existing condition. So it is being covered up with a skim coat that will follow the outline of the extruded brick here and use the color of the brick to blend in as opposed to standing out in that finished condition. A challenge that has come up and that the solutions are still being worked toward, but the recommended, or in terms of specific drawings, is this structural beam in the ground floor. It was found that this was how it was being held up over time. So you can see there's some solutions for that structural stability that have been useful in the past, but will not be sufficient moving forward with building codes. So our structural engineer is working on solutions for that because that pole is not supporting anything. We think it was placed there when all of the books were loaded on the upper floor. And now without the books there, there's not that pressure. So this is also meant to show on the south, on the south side of this beam, so where the dragon's tail is, the original plans were showing a finished height of ceiling that was here approximately, which was 6 feet 10 inches, and was not going to be comfortable for all of our users. So our architect is revising the plans to have a finished condition on the south side that matches the finished condition for the ceiling that was approved for the north side of this beam, which allowed for additional ceiling height. Another item that occurred recently in some pictures, this got moved over a little bit, that shows some of that progress is there was shoring done under this portion of the historic structure. So they excavated around the base of the foundations there and poured additional concrete footings to further support and stabilize this portion of the structure and keep it safe for generations. An additional item here that has come up during construction with some of the snows that we experienced this spring, the contractor was noting some damage had resulted on the gutters that had been previously installed. So those gutters will need to be replaced. They intend, here's another picture kind of showing some of that. They will be replaced like in aesthetic characteristic, but the metal, the gauge of that metal will be strengthened of a higher strength tolerance for future snows, as well as some other sort of methods for breaking up the snow on the roof so it doesn't slide at the same weight that we saw. So the other point I want to bring up tonight is we are in the process of planning a community open house. We are as of right now, they're still working on the news blast to send out to the community. Our public information officer will be distributing that information from on the city website, as well as I believe via email is the intent right now. So if you get his emails, you'll get that as well. We are requesting signups for the community open house because it's an active construction site. We are having a sign up for specific times to tour the site just to make sure that we have proper safety can be observed there. So if you'd like to sign up, you can reach out to me if you have any questions after that blast goes out, but that is coming soon. So we're very excited to share all of the progress that has been happening so far. They have been doing a great job moving things forward and meeting the schedule right now. And that is all I have on that. If you guys have any questions.
Mike, hi, Mike. The beam you showed, are they going to replace that, or are they still, or is that two 2x10s or 2x12s? You know what it is? Any idea?
So we do not have a final path forward for the beam replacement at this time because our structural engineer is still evaluating the best path forward. I do not believe that the beam itself is being proposed to be removed. I believe it's looking at reinforcement. It's just that metal pole that's underneath it that will likely not stay.
Because if they remove that, they could put in like a 4x8 maybe I-beam and gain headroom and be able to, lengthen the post or put a new post in it. Since the post isn't historic, they'd be able to just, you can have them made up there, no problem. So it would give them, it was kind of kill two birds with one stone. It'd give them better support and it would give them better headroom. There you are. That's my 2 bits.
Thank you.
You are welcome.
Okay, thank you so much. It's very exciting. I'm so excited to see. I was excited to see the forms going up and cement being poured. That's very, very good progress. I wanted to add one little item quickly to our other business. We keep meaning to talk about this and the year is getting away from us. Our 2024 Historic Preservation Awards. We need to, I think, settle on a time frame and start thinking about our plans for this because it'll, we have to prepare a little bit. Luckily, it will not be as big a deal as last year. We only have 1 year worth of approvals to consider this year. But have we settled on a month that we're going to do it this year? We're going to do it again toward the end of the year. I would like not to do it right in the Christmas timeframe, before Christmas if possible. Like maybe November, early November. What does everybody think?
Aaron just gave me the nod. But, thank you. Um, I haven't been here. Have you guys had conversations in open session about what you'd like to see for this year, other than not during the holiday season?
I can't remember what we've said.
We would typically do it, which isn't going to work obviously this year, in May, which is Historic Preservation Month. And at some point, maybe we can get back to that, but if we're going to do it this year, there would be very few, wouldn't there? Maybe
There would
we
be.
ought to
Maybe,
shoot for next May.
maybe a half a dozen.
Should we do 2 years together since there won't be very many, and then we could do it
Yeah,
of
I
May of
Right.
the next year?
I think it would be good if we could sort of transition back to doing it in May. Because that works for a lot of reasons, and it is Historic Preservation Month. I think the question's going to be, how many do we have yet this year that we would be bringing forward into 2025? I don't think there's.
There's
that
not a
many.
lot of completed projects except for what the city's really been doing per se.
Yeah.
That is my off the cuff knowledge as well, is that I am not sure that we have seen many completed projects with what has been brought forward this year in 2024. I don't know, it's something we can do more research into, but that is my knowledge as of right now.
Well, if we want to shoot for May, get back into that schedule, maybe the thing is to commit to doing it in May of next year, catching everything that was approved in 2023 and 24 that might be completed.
And I know last year may have been a bit of an anomaly, Chair or then Chair Edmondson did quite a bit of legwork. So as staff workload hasn't necessarily decreased during that time, there should also be a conversation at some point in time, perhaps between Chair Presti and Director Rolandhagen, to determine what that workload looks like for creating this event, and who kind of runs point on that.
Well, we all pitched in, the commissioners all pitched in, and so did staff. And I mean, I think it's not too tough for us to, the only thing that, again, I would ask of staff is to generate a list of completed or generate a list of MCACs that we've heard. And then we can go out and do the field work, see if they've been completed, see if they've satisfied the parameters of the application. And then, I don't mind putting together a party. I love doing that. So. And
You're so good at it.
It was good.
It was good. It was a
And
lot of
those
fun.
guys did a really good job up at Merrimont Castle. They really enjoy hosting that. And I think that for them, if we could nail down a specific time, they would love to put it on a standard calendar.
And I think we were trying to reduce the cost of this event for this next time around. Is that true? I thought I remember hearing some words from city council about it's budgeted. but-
They could choke up a couple of bucks for us.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
That's my
Merrimont Council,
feeling.
I don't think, I would love to have it at the new library, but I know it won't be done by next May.
Oh, yeah, it will be.
Will
Oh,
it?
yeah, absolutely.
I think
Right.
that would be the place to have it, quite frankly, to show off
Have it catered.
the new, yeah,
Yeah.
bring some food in but have it there. I don't know if we can do it in the schedule, whether Pikes Peak Library District would allow that, but I think that'd be a great venue. It's a large open venue and we're just doing we don't have to do elaborate hors d'oeuvres, something that could be catered in. I just
It could
think
be easy enough. I mean, it'd
that would be a cool location
Yeah.
and show off that facility. And that's what we're all about. And if it's done by then, it would definitely be one of those that would be receiving an award.
Well, I mean, it's a city facility. It's a municipal building, and PPLD is a tenant, but I'm sure they would work with us, particularly since they will probably be in a roundabout way to recipient, I don't know. But as long as I'm on this commission, there will be food, Susan. Okay, all right.
Keep you on this commission.
all right, okay.
All right, then, do I have a consensus that that's what we should shoot for? All right, staff put it on the calendar. We're going to start finding a date in May of 2025 and we'll work on the details of the process, but that does give us time. And I will commit to meeting with Fred and starting to talk about that. And you can pull in whoever you want to or reassign it as you want. I'm stuck. You can pull somebody else. Okay. Thank you so much. And thank you, Commissioner Edmondson, for always pushing that and reminding me, because yes, I'd kind of forgotten where we were on the process. It's important. And it helps promote and encourage people to do this work, which obviously is not easy, those who are rehabilitating houses. So I love to recognize them because it's not the easiest thing. Okay, with that, I have nothing else. I would declare this meeting adjourned at 7:34. Thank you all.
Thank you.